This is National Geographic Today.
Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Foreman.
And I'm Susan Rosejan. Always nice to have you with us as we circumnavigate the globe.
All this week we've been following the personal struggles of 6 athletes, pretty special athletes, who are scaling Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's highest peak.
Each of the climbers is physically challenged with a disability that he or she has to conquer every day. Now a mountain they're trying to conquer in 6 days of climbing.
We first met the members of the Achilles Track Club in New York, training for a challenge that would be like no other. A trip to Africa and a trek up Kilimanjaro. Some in the group are blind, some are deaf, and one is an amputee.
I have some audio books for the blind children.
Their first stop in Tanzania was a school for blind and deaf children, dropping off much-needed supplies.
Oh, did you hear it breathe?
Then they went to a national park to experience Africa's wildlife.
I'm tired, it's killing me. I want to sleep, I want to go home.
But then the journey up Mount Kilimanjaro began. And immediately it was clear that despite their training, this would be a challenge for the team, both physically and mentally.
Okay, mind the rocks, okay?
One of the blind athletes, Artie Elephant, struggled almost from the start, staggering along behind his guide, hours behind the rest of the group.
I don't know how much farther.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's not think about that.
By day 2, Artie was exhausted and felt he had to give up. But he wished the rest of the team good luck
There's still 6 going up.
on their final push to the summit.
So now they are on their way down to the last few days, the hardest days of this journey.
All of them are hurting, as you know you can, doing this kind of thing. Fatigue, altitude sickness, and bitter cold are also waiting on them on the final leg of their journey.
3 days into their expedition, and the team is approaching Camp 3 at about 17,000 feet above sea level. The views here are spectacular, but for blind climber Julius Wilson, they are something like this.
Stay with me, yeah? Put both legs up there. What the hell am I, a mountain goat? What am I doing up here?
The team's 3 blind climbers are progressing well, which comes as a relief to the head guide, Richard Mearsden.
I thought we'd probably have to look after them much more on the mountain than we're doing. I mean, for them to walk along just holding a rucksack and to be able to follow somebody, you know, that's superb.
To find out what climbing blind was like, Richard tried it himself.
All right, put your hand here.
When you can feel the rock, it's okay. You know your foot or your hand is solid, but otherwise, ooh.
The climbers spend 2 days getting used to the altitude and preparing for the assault on the summit. Altitude sickness is becoming an issue for even the best prepared.
I actually broke down, took some altitude sickness medicine. So I think if I figure from having problems at 14, probably start it now.
On day 5, the team sets out for Kibo Hut, the last camp before the summit. Some of the athletes are showing signs of fatigue. But not Yvonne Mosquera.
Like the bigger rocks.
Walking behind Yvonne, you sometimes forget that she's blind. But to be this smooth on rugged trails takes a lot of concentration.
Not only are you focusing on what you're doing and what your body's doing and being balanced, but then you have to pay attention to this other person who's actually guiding you.
Early in the afternoon, the team arrives in the clouds. Julius and his guide, Max Ossie, can smell the summit.
One-shot deal. That's it. Call it done, call it over, call it finito. One more stop, last stop. Top of Kilimanjaro.
The team will rest until midnight, when they will awake to sub-zero temperatures and an unrelenting climb up the crater wall. The first leg is a 3,000 vertical foot ascent up loose volcanic stone to Gilman's Point. Then it's an exhausting hour-and-a-half traverse to Uhuru Peak, Kilimanjaro's summit, at 19,344 feet. In the darkness, the team gathers for a quick snack, and then they turn upward. Yvonne Mosquera, Eddie Montanez, and Tom Cobb push ahead of the rest of the climbers. But as the team spreads out on the mountain, it is a nightmare going up. Still, with the support of the guides,
Keep going, you're doing great, Yvonne.
They struggle on.
We'll all make it. We're all gonna do it.
They have been climbing for 6 hours when the sun comes up. They celebrate their arrival at Gilman's Point.
Good job. Thanks, David.
Spent, man. Completely spent.
Eager for the summit, Yvonne and Tom move on, while Eddie pauses to gain his strength for one last effort.
Oh, bizarre! This is snow, and then right up ahead, this is huge glacier.
They're over 19,000 feet now. The oxygen content is half of what it is at sea level. Every step takes effort, but after 8 hours of climbing, cancer survivor Tom Cobb staggers to the top, the summit of Kilimanjaro.
A little out of breath. Can't believe it. Hope the rest of the team makes it up this far.
Moments later, Yvonne arrives without missing a step, and Tanzanian guide Tosha gives her the good news. Despite mild weather, Yvonne and Tom play it safe and head down quickly, hoping to pass Eddie's group on their way up.
Step over.
And they do. After 8 hours of suffering, Eddie is on the roof of Africa.
Here we are.
Eddie is the last climber on the summit that day.
Eddie, you're unbelievable.
We did it.
For Eddie and the Achilles team, the expedition has been a success which they hope will inspire disabled and able-bodied athletes alike.
I'm sure that in some place it's going to have an effect on somebody, and even if it's one person, right? And it made that person think that their life is not over because they're disabled. All the time and effort and hard work, it was worth it.
That's an amazing accomplishment. We both had the chance to visit sometime back with Eric Weinmayer, the first
blind climber to climb Everest. I also saw some of Eric's personality in that group, the same self-deprecating sense of humor, not a trace of self-pity.
And very much the sense that, you know what, they did something that most of us cannot do ever in our lifetimes.
More power
Wonderful
to them.
accomplishment.